So I would like to start by introducing what ProBEE is. It's a digital education society. It's a registered society in Canada. And our focus is mainly to look into a couple of areas for the society. One is the education. We also want to provide scholarships and also hopefully build networks. And this is one of these kind of events where we start by bridging the gap between the Canadian network or expert in Canada and then helping them out for a particular need in Pakistan. So this is kind of the general idea of what ProBEE is. Please feel free to visit our website and see further details. These are our board members, current board members. We are constantly looking for other board members as well. So feel free to reach out to us if you guys are interested in working with us. But I'm very thankful to all these volunteers who volunteer their time to help this society. Why ProBEEs? And a lot of people ask me why bees. Bees are honest creatures, so they are good in sharing, communicating with each other, and they are really a good teamwork. So that's why I'm really inspired by them. They cooperate, and that's the cooperation and the collaboration is the key to their success. And they also do a really hard work when it comes to securing food for their future. They're always prepared, and they're also serving their community, which they are. So that's why I'm very inspired of these ProBEEs. What we do in ProBEEs is that we want to create a professional network of people, and especially in Canada, who will start building a society and helping people, especially to bridge the gap between the developing and the developed countries. Our two main pillars are equity and education. So how do we actually make or give equal opportunities, but also equitable opportunities to people in different countries, so people can see the same level of education and it's provided to them, but also giving back to the society. For a lot of people like me who come and have a career in another place outside the country, how do we give back to our society so that our society can also benefit from that? So those are the two main pillars of what we want to do. We also want to do develop some scholarships, network, workshops, conferences, and then also courses and also trainings related to that. So this is just one of those activities which we want to do. And then most importantly, mentorship and actual kind of building the network. So today, the focus would be mostly on sustainable approaches for flood mitigation and also technologies related to that. I will actually just introduce the conference like I'm doing right now, and then I'll just give it to Aisha Atif. She's gonna be presenting us the statistic about flood, and then after that, we will be giving it to Myra Malik. She's the one who will be moderating everything today, hopefully, and then we have four presenters, myself, and then Dr. Atar Rahman Sahab, and then we have Dr. Imtiaz Shah, and then Dr. Javid Iqbal, and then so Dr. Javid Iqbal. So those would be like the four main presenters today. Hopefully there will be questions after each presentation, and towards the end we will have other questions as well. So I'm very thankful to our organizer, especially Aisha Atif. She will be presenting us the statistic of our event, and then she's currently a student, so we have captured all the different formats of people around us, and then also our moderator, Myra Malik. Thank you very much for joining. She's CMA and CPA, and currently she's a policy lead at the city of Mississauga, so a wealth of experience. And then also Dr. Manan Sahab, everybody knows him as professor and director outreach, so he's our event publicity and promotion for this event. So thank you very much, all of you guys, for joining. This is where you guys can find some more information about our YouTube channel, Facebook, and then also Twitter and email if you guys are interested. So that's all for me today. Thank you, everybody, and welcome you again for joining today. And I will then hand it over to Aisha to take it from here.
Hello, everyone. I hope that you're all doing very well. On behalf of Dr. Rafiq Ahmed, I would like to welcome you all to the virtual ProBEEs Symposium. The topic of our discussion today is sustainable approaches and technologies for flood mitigation. We are joined by Myra Malik, Business Services Supervisor with the City of Mississauga, Canada, and she will be moderating the discussion, as well as distinguished participants who will be speaking on topics such as flood mitigation technologies to flood prediction and modeling. Before beginning, I would like to share a video on the recent catastrophic floods taking place in Pakistan and the scale of damage and impact. Thank you.
Thanks, Aisha, for presenting. So, Myra, it's over to you.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're having our participants increase, so it's really wonderful to have you all. As Dr. Rafiq and Aisha have mentioned, my name is Myra, and I'm honored to be moderating today's very, very important and informative session focusing on the floods. Just a little overview. Today, we will go through 4 presentations. I will be introducing each presenter. There might be time for 1 or 2 questions in between if you have any. However, we would like to park a key discussion and a lot of questions at the end. You're welcome to message the questions on the chat, or if you'd like to speak, unmute, but we try to keep the discussion going and the presentations flowing. Perhaps a lot of your questions could be answered within those presentations as well. So that's the intention. But again, welcome and thank you. I will begin by introducing our first presenter, who is Dr. Rafiq. A little bit of an introduction about him, or information about him, is Dr. Rafiq Ahmed is an associate professor in Department of Mechanical Engineering at University of Alberta. He is the founder and director of Laboratory of Intelligent Manufacturing, Design and Automation, With a postdoc of 2 years at University of Luxembourg and over 6 years at the University of Alberta, he has published more than 100 peer-reviewed journals and conference publications. Dr. Ahmed obtained his PhD in mechanical engineering from France. He holds a BSc Science in Mechanical Engineering from UET Peshawar, which is in Pakistan. He is board member of International Society of Automation. He's also the director and founder of Canadian not-for-profit ProBEEs Digital Education Society, which is leading the discussion today. Over to you, Dr. Rafiq.
Thank you so much, Mariam Malik, for this warm introduction. Are you able to see my screen properly?
Yes.
So good morning again, everybody. I will actually start leading the discussion, especially the presentation. And the main purpose was because I'm coming from mechanical background, so I'll be the farthest on the topic. So that's why I'll just talk about the basic needs and what is required for an engineering approach to tackle flood mitigation. And then hopefully the other presenters who will be more expert on the topic, they will come and they will talk about the tangible objectives related to flood mitigation technologies and approaches. So without ado, this is where I belong. This is where I come from, and you can see that it's one of the beautiful places on earth. Swat is, if you guys have visited it or not, it's one of the places where people say that it's the Switzerland of Pakistan. You can see the water and the landscape. It's beautiful, and it's mesmerizing that you can watch all these beauty. But when it comes to situation like this, when we talk about flood mitigation, water, too much of water could be a problem as well. So that's why we need to find a way to see how we can actually keep the beauty of these places, but also kind of look for opportunities that in the future we can actually predict any of these damages. In 2010, we saw a devastating flood, and I was there. I remember the time when I was in Swat and all the bridges were broken, and it was hardly possible for anybody to go outside the city. We were kind of trapped in an area, and I literally went in these ships outside when I was moving to France after a month of cage in Swat. And everybody know the situation around 2010, what happened and how damaging that flood was. But we learned nothing out of that damage. And then 2022, August 2022, we can see most of the damages happening again, exactly in the same way or even more. We did not plan anything in terms of our infrastructure. We did not plan anything in terms of engineering. So it is something which is really shocking for us, and we don't want to see this kind of things happening in Pakistan. But I mean, everybody is saying this, that why such thing is happening across Pakistan, and then especially globally, what is happening? There is something which is called climate change and global warming, which is happening, and we need to understand what that is and what is the impact of this global warming on our society. So climate is nothing but it's like the pattern of how do you actually predict a weather in a particular way for a particular duration. So it's mostly looking into the weather on a longer duration of time and seeing how this weather is changing over a period of time. So we need to find ways to see why this climate change happens. And one of the big things over there is called the greenhouse effect. So everybody knows that around our Earth, there are different types of gases. For example, carbon dioxide, methane, water vapors. Those are called green gases around the Earth, and those are used to kind of trap the heat which is going outside from the Earth to the space. And in a particular proportion, if those greenhouse gases exist, they are beneficial for the Earth. But when those gases are more, for example, if we are just generating a lot of these greenhouse emissions, then that creates the Earth temperature to rise, and that's what is happening around Pakistan as well. So the temperature is increasing, and we don't have any way to mitigate that. It's because we are increasing our greenhouse gases a lot. And there might be many reasons for this kind of climate change. Some of them are natural, some of them are anthropogenic causes, and that's what we will focus more today. There are some natural changes as well. For example, ocean circulation, life changes on Earth, and then also ocean atmospheric change. So I don't want to go into details of that, especially sun could also be one of the source of these changes. But most importantly, what are those anthropogenic changes which are caused by human? One of them, the biggest one, is the greenhouse gas effect, which I just talked about. Deforestation, coal mining, air pollution, industrial processes, all these things are in our hands and we can change them. One of the big one which we are trying to change is the billion tree tsunami effect, which we are trying to do through some initiatives in Pakistan. Those are the things which we really need to focus on so we can actually help our society. And believe me, Pakistan is not the only place. If you look into statistic and also the research across the world, this is just one research paper which talks about the impact of global warming on different countries. And if you see that when the global warming is increasing, for example, from +2 on the second C to +4, you can see the impact on different countries. And Pakistan is far behind the impact in any other countries. For example, India, China will be the most impacted countries. Here, if you look into this impact in terms of population, you can also see that China is way ahead of any other country, so they will be more impacted. Number of people impacted in China will also be more impacted, and then India, and then Bangladesh, Vietnam, Myanmar, and then Pakistan. So Pakistan is still seeing a big impact when it comes to global warming, and that's where we need to play a role, because we see similar kind of impact in China and India as well, but we don't see that many people are impacted there. And there is a reason for that. It's because we don't have proper planning. So we need our government to create more policies in terms of how we actually do the greenhouse emissions. We also need to kind of run our businesses more sustainably. We also need, as a person, we also need to make our choices. Then how can we protect carbon footprints in terms of using less plastics, for example. We also need to kind of also work and find people who can actually help those businesses and government people to kind of mitigate those climate changes. And then also our research, most importantly, need to focus on different technologies which will be helpful. And that's where this flood mitigation technologies are extremely important. And I want to talk about some of those. Although this is not an exhaustive list, but digitization can play a big role. We need to kind of capture data from our environment and what we are doing, and especially, for example, from 2020 flood, we have not captured any data, and we don't even know what is coming in the future. Even 2022, we had another flood, and we don't have the digitization data. So we need to capture data. We need to understand how this flood started, where it started, how big was it, at which places, and then we have a lot of time until it reached to a particular location, for example, Sindh and Punjab, but we have still not planned any of these digitization technologies. So we need to focus more on the digitization technologies. We also need to create SMS-based services. For example, if there is an impact coming, then how do we alert people? How do we alert people in a particular area? That is not a difficult task. The government can easily implement these kind of SMS-based alert services so that they can mitigate any damages. Also, we need to invest more in robotics technology. There are many technologies which are available across the world, which can be used even for flood mitigation, but also survivors. For example, how do we actually help survivors to kind of get into safer places? Drone technologies is also another big one. We can easily invest in these technologies to kind of do surveying, for example, to kind of understand the scale of a flood, but also at the same time how we can create an impact around saving lives using drone technology to kind of detect even where the humans are. And I saw that none of us were using any of these drone technologies. 3D mapping is another big one, and I'm sure some of the experts will be talking about that how do we map the existing infrastructure, but also we can actually map what a flood can do, or even kind of look into the future prediction around those. There are simple technologies, for example, flood barriers and walls, which we can easily manufacture in Pakistan. But I have not seen any single company producing such kind of products. So we can actually really look into those kind of flood barriers and walls. I'll give you some example on the next slide as well. And the most importantly, the last three technologies I want to talk about is the education tools. Currently, most of the damage is happening in Pakistan is because of the uneducated people. For example, the people who don't even know that a flood can damage them. So how do we create education tools and technology so that we can help people in those areas? But also flood-proof infrastructure and planning, that should be the priority of the government. So then how we can, where we can actually construct our buildings and how we can allow constructing buildings, especially if they are waterproof and if they are flood-proof. So we need to kind of invest in these kind of planning technologies and as well. And most importantly, future prediction and simulation modeling. I'm sure one of the experts will be talking about those, so I don't want to go into detail about that, but how do we predict in the future that what need to happen and what can happen in which year it can happen? Those technologies exist now, so we need to really invest into kind of how do we predict and model the future floods in Pakistan, especially. So I'll talk about a couple of those technologies in more detail. For example, this is a simple water gate technology, which you can find easily in many places. And this technology is very simple. You can actually design and develop that in Pakistan, similar kind of structure, which actually, it might not be useful in Swat, but it might be very useful in areas like Sindh and other places where you know when the flood is coming, you can easily predict and kind of put those kind of technologies into place so that you can actually protect your buildings and people and hospitals, especially from these kind of flood environments. Another technology, which is actually a technology developed here at the University of Alberta by one of our colleagues, and this technology is really life-changing because you can actually use this in flooding areas. You can use it in any mudding area or sanding area. So you can actually use, for example, for survivors, to bring survivors into places. You can also use them for surveying. Many applications can be adopted. And this is not a difficult technology that can be investigated in Pakistan and kind of implemented as well on a larger scale, especially by the government and other agencies. So just one other example on that. Another example is a seismic alert system. I recently experienced that 2 weeks ago when I was in Mexico City. I was standing there and then there was alarm and they told me there is earthquake coming. And then I was just surprised by the amount of time we had. So we came out of the building, we were just standing outside. After 70 seconds, the earthquake came. I was surprised by this technology. So the way it works is that you have all these different types of sensors on the coast, and when an earthquake came, the sensor detects the earthquake, and then that actually goes directly to directly triggers the wireless sensor, and that goes into the alarms, which people can actually see before handing. So it's a very simple technology where you have a sensors, for example, in the earth. That sensor is kind of accelerometer that detects the vibration on the earth, and that transforms that information into a GPS antenna, and that goes to an alarm system where people can be saved. Similar kind of thing can happen on the flood warning system. We can easily adopt and develop those kind of technology and put it into different places in Swat, for example, or any other places where we can detect the damage of the flood which is coming and then kind of alert our system. Again, emergency alert system, if you lived in Canada, you can easily see that this kind of things happening a lot in Canada. So if something like this happens, we need to create that kind of emergency alert system to people so they are alerted of what is happening. So just to summarize, we need to investigate more in the digital technologies, future simulations, flood infrastructure, educational technologies, and kind of engineering tools and technologies. So that's all for me. Thank you very much, Myra.
Thank you, Dr. Rafiq. This was very, very helpful. We'll start off with another presenter, unless there's any key questions if somebody has. Otherwise, we prefer parking them for the end of the presentations. I don't see any questions in the chat, and I don't see anything in the panelists. So we will go ahead with our second presenter. This is to introduce Dr. Ataur Rahman. He's currently the chairman and professor at Department of Geography and Geomatics.
Myra, there is a question, raised hand by Hamza Khan.
Sure, Hamza. No, thank you for that. Yes, please, Hamza, go ahead.
Yes, my question is that as we know that in Swat basically we can adopt such kind of latest technologies, but the most important thing is the that of awareness in the local level. So how we can aware people before such kind of flood hit in such kind of devastations, and also the governance issues here are very much they are prominent in such kind of things that they don't the governance is very bad here in such kind of they are not delivering well to aware people that how we can mitigate flood and regarding construction. So how we can enhance such kind of things in Pakistan like in Swat. Thank you.
Thank you, Hamza, for the question. And I think that's why I said that the last three technologies I talked about were the extremely important one. One of them is education technologies. There are many ways to kind of educate people. And I think that's where we need to focus more from the government in Pakistan, that how do we create different types of awareness. There are many NGOs, organizations that can actually easily create those kind of awareness technologies, but we need to have the technology first. And then from the technology, we need to identify, okay, this is how it works. For example, if there's an alert comes, how do you actually predict that? How do you actually react to that kind of alert? So we probably need to go on the local level and kind of educate those people, but it comes with time. Education is not something which can be done within a week or 2 weeks or a month or a year. It's a longer time process. So that's where we need to focus on the technologies, and then kind of in parallel, we need to work on the awareness of people. But I think government need to play their role because without government, nothing can happen there.
Thank you, Hamza, for the question. Thank you. Okay, so we'll go ahead with our next presenter. This is Dr. Ataur Rahman. He's currently the chairman and professor in Department of Geography and Geomatics at University of Peshawar in Pakistan. Dr. Ataur Rahman is serving as a chairman at department. He has authored over 150 publications, where a predominant majority of scientific research papers and book chapters are on Hindu Kush, Himalaya, in the field of climate change, water advocacy, policy, agriculture, geography, and disaster risk management. He has supervised and produced 35 MS and 6 PhDs. Dr. Ataur Rahman mainly focuses on environmental assessment, social vulnerability, disaster risk, disaster resilience, multi-hazard vulnerability and risk assessment, climate change, mapping atlas, development plans and rehabilitation. He's also Secretary National Curriculum Review Committee. He's on the Secretary National Curriculum Review Committee on Disaster Management. Welcome, Dr. Rahman.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction. I think the voice is clear. Can you hear me, please?
We can hear you perfectly.
Okay, good. Thank you, the organizing committee members and the organizers of this very important event on very important days, which is particularly important for the risk managers in Pakistan. The title which I have selected for today's presentation, it is the Transboundary Hydrology, Climate Change and Flood Risk Management, with particular reference to the Kabul River Basin, Hindu Kush region. Kabul River is one of the transboundary hydrology it has a typical characteristics, and the characteristic is different from the Indus River system. With the changing climate scenario, it has affected the flood characteristic as well. This is one of the maps showing the HKH region, what we call as the Hindu Kush, Himalayas and Karakoram regions, the glaciers and healthy rivers. Protecting our rivers, mountains and glaciers, particularly which are originating from these HKH region, is very important one. This region is actually the region, which we also called as the pulse of the earth. Because almost 1/3 of the world population, it depends on the rivers taking its origin from the Himalayas, Karakoram, and Hindu Kush regions. This is also called as third pole of the earth, highest volume of snow cover, glaciers, and permafrost outside the polar region. Therefore, it is also called as the third pole of the earth. My focus is on the Cobble River Basin, which is also one of the river taking its origin from the HKH region. Here you can see the map of Pakistan, India, and then the Himalayas, Karakoram, and Hindu Kush region. Some of the important rivers which take its origin from this region include the Amu-Darya, Indus, Ganges, Brahmaputra, Ravati, and Salween, Mekong, Yongtze, Yellow, and Tarim river basins. It supports almost 240 million people. The river basin provides water to 1.9 billion population. I mean, it's a big chunk of the population and the communities living in the downstream areas of the rivers taking its origin from the HKH region. This is the model which shows the upper catchment areas and the hilly mountainous areas and the rivers which flow in the narrow gorges and with the terrific speeds and containing the flash flood characteristic, very devastating characteristics. Then there are downstream characteristics or the drainage system. So the upper characteristics and upper system, it has different mitigation strategies as compared to the plain areas when river is flowing. I guess there will be some beginners as well among the participants. For them, climate change refers to a significant and sustained change from one climatic condition to another climatic conditions. I will share some of the key characteristics of the climate change as well. But the greatest challenge facing the world at the beginning of this century, it is the climate change World Economic Forum. Climate change that can be linked with the declining snowpack, means with the increasing temperature, then retreating glaciers, because thousands of glaciers, they falls in the catchment area of Cobble River Basin and Indus River Basin. Then the glacial lake outburst flood, nowadays it is a frequently occurring phenomenon in the HKH region. Urban heat islands, and then changing pattern of precipitation, means the rainfall, snowfall, and hailstone characteristics. Sometime intense precipitation, sometime for a longer time, we have a drought situation. So ultimately, it leads to floods and drought disasters. Now, understanding the link between the climate change and extreme weather events, what different things we can link with the climate change? Like, for example, the first one is the frequency. Are events occurring more often than in the past? If the answer is yes, so you can link this with the climate change. So obviously the frequency of hydrometeorological events, the frequency is gradually increasing. So it is occurring more frequently nowadays. Then intensity, are events getting more severe and damaging one? Means when floods occur, either the floods are more damaging with high intensity, or when rainfall occur, in a short period of time, we have a high intensity rainfall or high intensity of storm events, extreme weather events. So means intensity. Are events getting more severe and damaging one? So the answer you will find yes. Duration, are events lasting longer than the norms? Means the duration of extreme weather events or climatic events. Then the fourth parameter is the timing, are events occurring earlier or later in the season? So means if you look into the 2022 summer season, it was started in March rather than in April, or we had several heat waves which hit Pakistan in March, April, May, and June. So means the highest temperature it was recorded. So means timing, are events occurring earlier or later in the season similarly. So these are some of the parameters with the help of which one can measure the extreme weather phenomena and linking the same with the changing climate scenario. I'm quoting some of the examples with reference to the linkage of climate change with the extreme events. You can see here Pakistan hydrometeorological events during past 2 decades. The first bullet, you can see ever highest and lowest temperature, heaviest rainfall and flooding events it was recorded during past 2 decades. The second one, you can see the ever highest temperature recorded in Pakistan is 53.5 degrees Celsius temperature. It was recorded in Mohenjo-daro, south central part of Pakistan on 26 May 2010. Means the ever highest temperature it was recorded. It was the hottest temperature ever recorded in Pakistan and ever recorded in Asia. The highest rainfall of 620 millimeter was also recorded in just 10 hours in Islamabad on 23rd July 2001. Again, another high intensity extreme weather event. Then the heaviest rainfall in Islamabad in past 100 years. And similarly, the recent phenomena, the extreme and intense rainfall which occurred in the semi-arid and arid region of Balochistan, where flash flood hit the downstream communities. So these are some of the extreme weather events which was recorded during past 2 decades. And all these events, they are intensifying day by day. I'm giving you some of the glimpses of the extreme events, like for example, during 1997 to 2005, there was a drought period that hit the entire country. So initially, the drought period means there was temporary reduction of rainfall, and the entire country, it came under the influence of this drought event. So it was started in 1997 and continued till 2005. So I mean, initially, this was the extreme weather phenomena for almost 7-8 years that hit our country and paralyzed the economy of Pakistan. One of my PhD students, she worked on the Cordex simulations with special reference to the drought situation over the entire country. Different models we have tested, like for example, SPI index, SPI index, standardized precipitation evapotranspiration index, Mann-Kendall trend test, Spearman core trend test, then the sense slope estimator, Cordex simulations. So all these simulations was carried out, and Kurratullain recently completed her PhD on this particular topic. So looking to this one extreme events, when there is low rainfall or temporary reduction in rainfall, we call it the drought situation. So you can see here that this was the one extreme of the rainfall events. I means when there is temporary reduction of rainfall, we call it the drought situation. But when there is intense and high rainfall, that leads to the flood situation. So in the upper catchment areas, flash flood, and then in the downstream areas, we have the riverine floods, and in the urban areas, we have pluvial floods. So I mean, this is one extreme, temporary reduction in rainfall, then increase in rainfall, that leading to the flood situation. Balance is a resource, but reduction is a disaster. And increase in rainfall, high intensity rainfall that leading to the flood situation. So I mean, when balance is disturbed, that directly lead to the disaster situation. I'm coming to the extreme temperature events. So you can see here a long list of the meteorological stations where more than 50 degrees centigrade temperature is recorded. So you can see the date and the temperature recorded and the met stations where this was recorded. So you can see here during the past 2 decades, almost all these stations, they have recorded more than 50 degrees Celsius temperature. So I means more high intensity temperature is hitting our cities and our communities. And this directly affect the atmospheric condition, they directly affect the atmospheric pressures. So when high temperature is recorded, there we have low pressure area and the winds start blowing from the high pressure areas towards the low pressure areas under the bi-ballot law. So I means when there is heat waves, obviously it will be followed by high pressure winds, which take its origin from the oceans, particularly during the summer period. I'm quoting an example and making to pave way for the 2010 flood events, which hit initially. It was called as the super flood of 2010. So you can see the south central part of Pakistan, it was hit by extreme heat wave where 53 degrees centigrade it was recorded at Mohenjo-daro. So you can see here, it was on 30th May 2010. Then it was followed by extreme 2010 flood events. Now coming to the transboundary hydrology, coming to the Kabul River system. The Kabul River basin is spread over 2 countries, Afghanistan and Pakistan, with more portion of the basin located in Afghanistan and a small portion located in Pakistan on the eastern side of the Devon line. Here you can see a map showing the distribution. Chatral River, it takes its origin from Pakistan. Chiantar Glacier is the source of this Chatral River. And then Kabul River takes its origin from the spring at Kohe Baba, extreme, which is located west of Kabul city. And then both these rivers, Chatral River, which is called as the Kunad River in Afghanistan, it confluences at Jalalabad, and then finally it entered into Pakistan. And millions of population depends on this Kabul River system. And almost 2,000 glaciers, it feeds this Kabul River system. So I mean, it falls in the Hindu Kush region, taking its origin entirely from the Hindu Kush regions, but millions of population depends on this Kabul River system. We have carried out mean monthly rainfall distribution over all the 12 months. So you can see the 2 months. One is the February and March. They are called as the wettest months during winter period. And then you can see here, July and August are the humid months. Then the seasonal rainfall. So you can see here the Swat region, the Malam Jaba, from where the Swat River taking its origin, and then it finally confluences with Kabul River system near Charsadda. So you can see here the humid part, it is located in Swat region. Malam Jaba is the humid station in this Kabul River system. Then we also carried out the seasonal rainfall trend based on the Mann-Kendall and Spearman road trend test. It was carried out. Some meteorological stations has shown the rising trend in rainfall pattern, whereas there are some met station which is showing the reduction in the rainfall pattern in different seasons. So you can see here again the temperature, because temperature is also a very important parameter for melting these glaciers and the snow covered land, which is located in the catchment area of this Kabul River system. Overall in Pakistan, there is rising trend in temperature. You can see here, the temperature is gradually rising. So all the 92 meteorological stations, the data were collected and it was found that there is increasing trend in temperature. Then you can see here the increasing trend in rainfall was also recorded in entire country. So I mean, both there is positive trend, rising trend in temperature and rainfall. This was some of the satellite images which was used for the 1992, 2000, 2008, and 2016. And the snow cover area, it was calculated. So all the data which was collected, it is for the month of April. So April 1992, April 2000, April 2008, and April 2016. So you can see overall, there is gradual reduction in the snow cover area, which falls in the catchment area of this Kabul River system. Some rivers, which falls in the our Pakistan territory. Overall, month-wise distribution, you can see here the snowfall. So you can see here the variation in the snow-covered areas. You can see here, low snow cover is reported during June, July, August, and September, October. So you can see here the low snow cover areas. This is the overall basins, Afghanistan and Pakistan territory. But ultimately, the Kabul River, it entered into Pakistan and finally become part of the Indus River. This is also called as the western tributary of the Indus River system. But one thing which I would like to specially refer here, that the flood characteristic in Kabul River system is entirely different than the Indus River flood characteristics. So I mean, in this Kabul River system, usually high discharge, it is recorded in May, April and May, because maximum rainfall and the snow melting and the glacier melting, it feed the Kabul River system. Whereas the Indus River high discharge is recorded during July, August, because the catchment, most of the Indus River catchment area, it falls in the monsoon belt region. You can see here the transboundary hydrology and management is always a challenge for riparians. They are competing interest and a complex issue. This has often resulted in a unilateral use and exploitation of this natural resource. Multiple factors contribute to water crisis, and including rainfall variability, hydrological extremes like floods. You can see here almost 40% of the world population depends on the transboundary hydrology. There are almost 286 international transboundary rivers in the world, out of which 151 countries of the world they are sharing. So you can see here the drainage basins, sub-basins, and drainage basins. One of the study, one of my students carried out, different types of land use, land cover changes. It occurred in the Kabul River basin, which falls both in Pakistan and Afghanistan. Radical changes have been identified, that there is gradual decrease in the vegetation cover and forest cover since 1991. So there is big loss to the vegetation cover, and mainly ruthlessly destroyed the catchment area of this Kabul River system. So I mean, this is one of the most important area which need the attention of the policy and decision makers to address this and work for the upper catchment areas and watershed management planning. These are some of the river dams being constructed or already proposed on the Kabul River system. My focus, you can see here on the area which falls in Pakistan, Himalayas and Hindu Kush region, more than 70,000 meters peaks that support numerous glaciers in the catchment area of Kabul River system. In 2010, what happened? You can see here 3 different streams, one from the north, from the Kunlun mountain systems, it entered into Pakistan. The other one is Cyclone Fit from the south, means from the Arabian Sea, and the third one was the monsoon streams. So you can see all the 3 streams, it merged at the northwestern part of Pakistan. And this was the reason behind the intense rainfall over the northwestern part of Pakistan, where more than normal rainfall it was recorded in mere 4 days of the wet spell from 27 to 30th August 2010. So you can see here the cyclone fit and the monsoon pattern. So this was one of my paper published in the Natural Hazards in 2013. So this was some of the pictures. So you can see here the rainfall which was recorded. So you can see here 4-day wet spell, the first bar it shows for all the meteorological stations. You can see here for total July rainfall, and then the 4-day wet spell rainfall, it was almost equal to the total July 2010 rainfall. Whereas the normal rainfall which occurs in July, so you can see here, it is far less than the 4-day wet spell. So you can see here, and then you can see here the Pakistan map showing the high intensity rainfall. So you can see here some of the damages which occurred in Swat region. I think Ahmed Rafiq Saab. You can see this is some of the picture of 2010 flood events. You can see the settlements. It is located right in the Swat River. And now you can see it is part of the active flood channel. You see, after 2010 flood, it was recorded. Again, you can see some of the erosion, and then you can see the flood event of 2010. You can see here again, the branches, the trees, it was uprooted. And these trees, it has blocked in the bridges. And a dam was developed behind these bridges, because bridges usually build the infrastructure like bridges, they are built mostly on the narrow bottlenecks. And these tall trees, sometimes 300 feet tall trees, it was stuck in these bridges, and dams were developed behind these bridges. And ultimately these bridges, it was burst by these temporary dams. You can see here the discharge of 2010 floods. So you can see the 2010 flood discharge. It was ever highest recorded. You can see here. So these are some of the damages of 2010 flood events. Again, you can see here, you can see the bushes and the channels which is flowing. So several times it was higher than the discharge. It is Amandara Bridge when one is proceeding towards the Swat area. This is the 2022 flood event, the recent flood events of the Swat region. You can see here, you can see the before flood events and after flood. You can see or during the flood events, can compare the situations. Again, you can see the accessibility and the transportation play a very important role to connect the communities of upstream areas. So you can see so how terrible the situations and how the infrastructure it was collapsed, and the remote communities. So you can see here, it needs special attention of the infrastructure planners.
Thank you, Dr. Atal Rahman. Thank you so much. This is a very informative session. If you're okay, I'd like to park the questions for the session now, and if we can go ahead with the next presenter.
Sure, okay.
Is this a good time to pause the presentation? Is that, or are you almost wrapped up?
Sure. So you can continue, you can go to the, so some of the things, let me wind up in 1 minute.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, so these are some of the susceptibility mapping in the Cobble River Basin, which were carried out. Then some of the key areas for the return period of 50 years using the HECRAS and JURAS methods. You can see here some of the 80 years return period, the flood affected area in the Cobble River system. Then beside this, we are also working how to mitigate these disasters. So some disaster risk management strategies and some models we have tested on one of the river, we call it the Panchkola River Basin. You can see here, high risk area and low flood risk areas. Some of the mitigation strategies we have proposed where we can install the weather radar stations for the early warning systems. So for that, site selections was also identified where to construct dams in order to cope with these disasters. So you can see here one of our paper, it was published in water journals. We have identified the suitable site for the dam selections. So we have identified 2 areas where to construct the dams. So these are some of the 3 models we have prepared. So we can further work on this and we can identify some suitable site in order to overcome and mitigate the flood disasters like the 2022 disasters. So this is one of our lab. We are working with this particular areas, hydromet and climate change research lab to be established at the Department of Geography. So I think you will love this slide. Thank you very much, and thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you very much. That was very helpful. If it's okay, we will skip the questions at this time. Please park your questions for the end of the session. We'll go ahead with our next presenter now. I would like to introduce Dr. Imtiaz Shah. He is an adjunct professor at Western University, which is in Canada, with a PhD in environmental management, USA. Dr. Imtiaz Shah has over 20 years of consulting, public and academic sector experience in environmental and water resources engineering, municipal infrastructure projects and management, including stormwater management, low impact development, climate change and infrastructure resiliency, flood mitigation, water quality and quantity, green infrastructure, and sustainable development. Dr. Shah secured his MS in civil environmental engineering in USA. He also secured his Master's in Science, Water Resource Engineering and BSc in Civil Engineering, both from Pakistan. With this, welcome Dr. Imtiaz, over to you.
Thank you very much, Myra. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm going to start sharing my screen with you. How is that?
Yep, we see it. We hear you perfectly.
Oh, thank you very much. I think my presentation was well positioned among the other 2 presenters. I think they talked about the issue, and I'm going to talk about the solution. As was mentioned, thank you for the introduction. My name is Dr. Shah. I am an adjunct professor here at Western, and I'm also a senior regional engineer with the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority. I'm the Associate Director of Water Center for Western. Over 25 years of experience in dealing with flood and stormwater management. So what I'm going to do is just a quick overview of what I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to talk about Pakistan River Basin System because this is related to one of the solution that I'm going to offer. I'm going to talk about some general climate change and its effect, some data. And then I am going to propose or suggest a 9-step solution for the issue that Pakistan is facing with related to flooding and climate change. And out of those 9-step solution that I'm offering, I have expertise in only 3 or 4. The rest I'm leaving to the other experts. So one is the urban planning process. Second one is the regulation and specification for the development or urbanization. Third one is subwatershed studies, and that's what my experience is. And stormwater management, that is my other experience. Talking about the hydrologic effect or the hydrology cycles, and when we develop as a human, what are the effects that we bring into the hydrologic cycle. More conventionally, when we deal with on a smaller side, we call it water balance. So I'll be talking about 2 methods, conventional stormwater management method and sustainable stormwater management methods. Sustainable stormwater management are a new concept. We also call it low impact development. Some people call it climate change resilient structure. Some people call it sustainable development. And the 2 presenter preceding me also talked about public education. And I think that's very, very important that we educate our public about the importance of water resources and stormwater management in Pakistan. And then I think I will, if I have time, I'll talk about the benefits of the stormwater management and sustainable development. So we'll start with the river basin system in Pakistan, and you can see very rich in terms of water resources. And mind you, these are the major rivers and tributaries. There is no the first or maybe the second order tributaries in here. So very rich in terms of surface water. Think about a watershed approach. So if we have a watershed for each and every of these natural feature, and then come up with the quantity and quality control with the base flow requirement, we can really mitigate the effect of the climate change. Some of the statistics that I would like to share with you, or some of the effects that I would share with you, is I am from Nowshera, which we call Nohar. And in 2010, I never believed or never thought that my house will be flooded because as a child, when there will be flooding every 2-3 years, and we will go there for fun to see, hey, let's go and see the water. But I've never expected that there will be a flood one day in 2010 August, and there will be 6 foot of water in my house, which forced us to actually leave the house. We rebuilt it, and then we moved on to higher planes now. But that's the issue. That's still most of my family relatives were affected. We lost a few family members in the flood. So blame it on climate change, but there are also some things that needs to be taken care of. So as was mentioned by other presenters, the storms are getting more localized and severe, and it's causing more frequent flooding. We're losing millions of dollars in infrastructures, and we're losing loss of humans. I believe there is a statistic that thousands of people were died in the 2010 flood, and also hundreds of people died in most recent flood in 2022. My wife and my son was in Pakistan in August when the flood hit, so I had to call my wife to be rescued. I left 3 days before. I was there for 10 days for my son's wedding, and I left 3 days before. I left on August 22, and I think the flood happened on August 25th or so. The issue of climate change and its effect may be more severe in Pakistan because of the absence of public perception. And for some reason, we're not trying to connect the country economy with the climate change because we're losing billions of dollars. The issue of climate change is a real threat to the existing new development and the urban and riverine flooding issues. So we do have issues, both the riverine flooding and the urban issues. One of my friends actually quoted that flood does not hit us because we go through the flood by ourselves. So if you compare the Swat area and even Nowshera area, there are actually intense urbanization in the floodway. I have a childhood friend. A few months ago, he sent me a picture of him sitting in his backyard and playing rabab. He was my childhood friend. He used to play a very good rabab. And I'm like, why you're building your house just a few feet away from the flood? And he said, it's a nice area. And then when the flood hit in August last month, 2 months ago, in August 2022, a few weeks ago, he sent me the picture of the same house with 4 or 5 foot of water in his house. So that's what we do. We go to the flood by ourselves. The climate change is a bigger threat to Pakistan and tourism. This was a topic that I picked up. I was invited by another country. So this was a editorial in Pakistan English newspaper Dawn, and it says Pakistan can experience severe impact of extreme climate disaster with the water threat affecting local food and energy security. And in this picture, as you can see my screen here, it levels actually rank the countries that are mostly affected by climate change. This was actually the climate risk index ranking from 1997 to 2016, and you can see the severe, the red one. Pakistan is one of those few countries that are at the higher risk. Just talk about a little bit of precipitation. So again, this is from that report. As you can see that a total change from, this is from 1901 to 2006. If you look at the precipitation statistics, the total change is 61 millimeter, but from 1901 to 1954, it's 156, as you can see from here. And then you can see that increasing trend if you can see my mouse. So from 1957 to 2007, there is a total increase of 35 millimeter of rain. Those of you who are in the hydrology field, they will understand what does the rainfall depth mean. So when I heard 600 plus millimeter of rainfall mentioned by Dr. Taur Rahman, in 10 hours, that's a very, very intense rain. That's a very, very intense rain. So as you can see that from 1901 to almost 1957, 60s, the average annual rainfall was declining. It is a yellow line. But if you see the blue line onward from 1955 all the way to 2007, it's a slightly increasing trend. Similarly, according to the long-term index, the death toll of 523 people per year, so over a period of 20 years, 10,000 people were lost. The economic losses worth of US 3.8 billion, which was equal to 0.61% of the GDP in the 20 year. And in that, even from 1996 to 2015, Pakistan has suffered almost 141 extreme weather events. So the highest rate of population growth have reduced per capita water availability from 5,000 cubic meter per person to less than 1,000. And the future projected population growth may actually reduce that to less than 500 cubic meter per person. That's a very alarming situation. And remind you, this was in 1916. 500 cubic meter per second per person, that is the availability of surface drinking water to one person in Pakistan. This is very, very alarming situation. 500 cubic meter per person is nothing. The 2020 flood ranked Pakistan on top spot among the countries most affected by climate change, with a total loss of 25.3 billion and 5.4% of the GDP. That was according to a German watch. So those are the climate change issues that exist. Some of the statistic that was shared by Aisha and my other co-presenter. What is the solution? So in this slide, I'm suggesting 9 steps that Pakistan can consider immediately to stop tackling the issue of climate change and its effect. The white one, that's what I have experience in somehow. The red one, I don't have any experience in it. So one is the urban land use planning process, and I'll talk about that in detail. Regulation and specification for development. I will talk about that. People are building their houses. People are building their farmhouses. They don't have no respect for nature. They don't have respect for setbacks. They don't have respect for floods. They don't have respect for any natural hazard or heritage. Sub-watersheds, that's related to my first slide where I said, look at the screen. Pakistan is a very rich country in terms of water, but we are actually depleting all these sources just by not taking care of it or not just being careful about our surface watershed. So if we have the money and resources to spend on sub-watershed study. And actually, there is a study that actually rate the green economy. There's a word now, instead of the economy, people talking about green economy. Then actually the economy goes uphill, upward. It's in your economy improves if you relate your economy with the natural heritage and natural hazard. Effective stormwater management, that's my expertise. That's what I do for living. I do public education and the involvement of the public. So in our office, we have a communication office, and we do educate publics and school kids and about the natural heritage and natural hazard. Drinking water source protection, I will just say maybe a line or two about these things so that you guys are aware. So drinking water is not my field. I've done a couple of projects here, but as a consultant, when I was in consulting world, most of the drinking water from the area that I live in is basically groundwater, and our groundwater is depleting. There is no base flow requirement. There is no infiltration. There is no recharge system. I remember 2017, I was invited by China. I stopped by back home. I arrived at 10 a.m. I slept, and I woke up to a very loud noise. I woke up and I say, what's going on? And they say, well, a particular political party is giving money to individual to bore holes in their houses for drinking water. And I'm like, that's not a good idea. Have you ever did the hydrogeological study to see how much water do you have underground, or what is the status of it, how high it is, how recharges, if you can continue the base flow? They're like, nope, we don't know. And every single third or fourth house was actually boring holes. Now the situation is that they don't have, they have to go on deeper. A friend of mine, another example was installing an industry. He had an office and he was drilling a borehole. And I told him that in 3 years you won't have water. So I told him in 2017, and when I went there in 2019, he said, you were right. He has to dig another borehole to get to the drinking water. So we think we need to protect our sources of drinking water. Wastewater treatment, a very, very major issue. I remember as a kid going to school, we used to swim in Kabul River. We used to drink from Kabul River. When I was in grade 2, I remember that the new bridge of Nowshera was building. So we used to go there during recess time and we used to play. And we can actually swim in there. Now you can even touch the water. Industrial waste, commercial waste, waste from the city, everything goes in Kabul River. Deforestation, agriculture practices, we need to take care of that. And then the most important one is, I think, one of the most important ones, the involvement of academia, public and private sector. So again, so I'll talk about the 5 points that I can mention, and then I will focus on the 2 more important ones, sorry, the one important, which is the stormwater management. So what is the urban planning process? We really need to think about implementing the Urban Planning Act. I'm sure there is a planning act in Pakistan. I know there are some municipal ordinances. We need to stop and we need to start initializing this and asking people to follow the rules and the laws. People build their townhouses, people build their housing schemes, people build their houses without any prior permission, without any improvement, without any drainage plans, without any specification. So start utilizing the urban planning, the Planning Act, and the local municipal act or ordinance. Come up with the master plans and official plans for development. That way you can actually save your agricultural land also, because conversion of agricultural land to these massive housing, freeing with a country where you have more than 220 million people, it will be very difficult to find the food when your agricultural land is converting into a housing scheme so quickly. Also, during the planning process, plan for infrastructure, for example, such as water and wastewater and stormwater. When you're coming up with houses, just don't build houses. Come up with a grading plan, come up with a site plan, come up with roads and infrastructure, see where is the sources of drinking water, how you're going to take care of wastewater, and how you're going to take care of stormwater management. So when it rains, you have a nice house, but the water is standing right in front of your front door. Then the second step is to avoid flooding, avoid erosion and sediment issues, avoid building on the slopes, avoid polluting of your ground and surface water. Do not allow construction near water bodies like rivers and streams and lakes. Third step is to protect natural heritage, which are our woodlands and wetland. Do not deforest. Have studies, do EIS, environmental impact statements, from woodlands and wetlands, and based on the species and the ecology of the woodlands and wetland, come up with a setbacks requirement. These woodlands and wetlands are very, very important for the local climate, hydrologic cycle, water balance, and ecology. So have a setback from that. Make sure that you maintain the base flow requirement. Each and every plants in a woodlands and a wetland, and each and every species have certain volume that it requires to be taken or used in a 12 months. So maintain that base flow, maintain the quality of the runoff, and also protect the species. The last one is maintain natural ecosystem and development process. Don't affect the ecosystem with your development process. Maintain the water balance. And the most important thing, that if you have that infrastructure, how you're going to operate and maintain that. Some of the regulations, so we need to come up with the regulation and specification. And I'm sure there are regulation and specification. For example, what is the minimum setback requirement? So for example, all these hotels that are built in river swath in the middle of the river, I'm sure there is a law that requires that, I think it's say 130 meter or 130 gauge to be away from the rivers, but yet who allowed these buildings to be in the midst of the river? Also develop standard for new infrastructure. What is the width of the street? So there should be a minimum or maximum width of a street, minimum maximum slope of the street, maximum depth of water on the roads. For example, here when we design roads and street, we do not allow more than 0.3 meter of ponding under a major storm event. And that is done through stormwater management. How you are going to convey minor and major flow when you are developing these massive housing schemes? Do you come up with a grading and drainage plan before you approve the housing scheme? How they're going to take care of their stormwater? Come up with the maximum minimum velocities during a rain and flood event. Do we provide emergency access? Do we provide safe and dry access to all these developments? The next one, again, assist the municipality with interpretation of policies, technical and scientific information. Focus on a specific area's expertise, for example, flood, riverine, valley land slope, meander belt analysis, natural heritage, natural resources. I know that from Nowshera, and if you look at the Kabul River, Nowshera is a meander belt. So during flood, extreme flood, the water has to maintain the momentum. So instead of going through the meander belt, it wants to go straight into the town. Just to share with you what I do on a daily basis when I deal with developers and contractor, they come to our office for approval. And so what we have done is we have actually established our regulatory flood, and we ask for 15 meters from the top, from the flood, and that's the law. If somebody wants to encroach in an urban, and this is called two-zone policy, is so you establish a 250-year flood, and you can encroach into the flood only conditionally that you have a dry access, your depth is not increasing than 0.3 meter, nobody's at risk. There should be no basement in that house or that development. And when you show us through study that you are encroaching from the 250 into 100-year storm or flood, there is no rises in or increases in the flood. So these are some of the laws that or regulation that can be used there.
Dr.
Here's
Shah,
another example.
sorry to interrupt. Are we close to wrapping up? It's
Okay.
just, unfortunately, our time is running out. So
How much time I have?
we're a little bit over on time.
Sorry.
If that's okay, if we are able to perhaps focus on 1 or 2 slides that you'd like to really
So
kind of nail in, because I understand the flow that you're going and where you are focusing on the solutions, and I see that is where the interest lies.
So I'll just go through it maybe 1-2 minutes. So the hydrologic cycle I mentioned, when we go as a human, when we go through development process, we affect that. When we affect that, the 2 slides that can show pre-development, post-development. So pre-development runoff is clean, post-development it is affected, and it increased the velocity, quality, and all that stuff. What we do is stormwater management. So we do conventional, which is a wet pond, dry pond, regional pond. Regional ponds are more used for control. And then these are like local basin. They collect the flow, hold it, retain it, release it slowly. It recharges the ground and also provide quality and quantity control. And then some of the sustainable low impact development, we're using the water balance. So in here, I'll just skip that. I'll just go to the example. So low impact development, one is called rainwater harvesting. So basically you store the rainwater in your house or around your property and you reuse it. This is an infiltration or bioinfiltration. So you divert the runoff from the street into an infiltration trench. The infiltration trench clean the water, infiltrate it into the ground, and then divert it back to the storm sewer. Here's another swale from a highway or from a road. The check dams provide suspension, clean the water, and the runoff flows clean downstream. Pervious pavers in the parking lot, green roofs. I can talk about for hours and hours about green roofs. This is a new technology. People are now call it urban farming. There are cities in Europe where actually they grow lettuce and tomato, and they are actually delivering that into a local restaurant for salad. This is a green roof at Western University. One of my friend Keys Groves, who's actually in this business, provided these pictures to me. This is a Western building. This is Ivy School at Western, another picture of that. This is our office, that's where I work. So you can see Fanshawe Dam in the background. This is a very large area in a natural area, and you can see that there are no pipe on this site. The only pipe we have is the drinking water. So we have incorporated all kind of sustainable stormwater management on this site. Public education about climate floodings, and these are some of the benefits. Thank you so much. Sorry for going a few minutes extra. Apologies for that.
No problem at all. This is such incredible information. So I completely understand. Like each slide has so much layers and wealth put into it. So I really appreciate. Thank you for doing. I will go ahead and present our next presenter, which is the last one for today. And after that presentation, we will be opening it up for questions. So thank you for your patience. So I'm happy to welcome Dr. Javed Iqbal. He's a senior geospatial scientist, Tetra Tech at Edmonton, Canada. He has over 18 years of natural resource management, field data administration, and spatial data analysis experience in several countries. He specializes in GIS applications, analysis, and modeling in various hydrological, forest, and ecosystem values. He focuses on developing a GIS-based decision support system for forest pest management with extensive work involving spatial analysis, landscape ecology, and forest estate modeling for his doctorate. He has broad experience working with spatial and non-spatial data across multiple sectors like academia, government, forest, and oil and gas to turn data into information and knowledge for enhancing planning and well-informed decision-making. Welcome, Dr. Javed Iqbal. Over to you.
Thank you, Myra. Thanks for the nice introduction. It's an honor to present at this forum there. It's a great initiative from Dr. Rafik and the other organizers there. I will try my best to catch up with the standard that the other presenters have set for me. I'll try to be as precise as possible. So as discussed, the title is flood prediction and modeling, and I'll be talking more on the geospatial side where my expertise lies. Okay. So there are endless possibilities there in terms of using different tools and different options to address floods. We can talk about coordination in terms of where the data is coming from, how to manage that data. We have a centralized body where much of that data can be processed, integrated. The research and development is a key towards any development. Flood is a problem. It has to be dealt with in a manner where data should be brought in, and a centralized body should digest that and have some tools, have some rules and regulations that goes on the ground in terms of mitigating that. In order to address that, modeling is the key. The reason why we use models is you can go and predict a lot of stuff, and you can do some scenario planning based off that. And once you bring in that atmosphere, that information, you can start planning based off that, and you can have some engineered, non-engineered solutions to address those problems. In terms of modeling, we have a number of tools. Satellites is one that has been used a lot. IoT, Internet of Things, which Dr. Rafiq have touched upon, is an important one for to get some alerts. Similarly, surface modeling, flood and flow estimates based off the historical floods, as well as what you can expect based on the climate change. Based on those estimates, you can do some hazard assessments and hazard mapping. In order to do the modeling, you have the hydrology side covered there. There are a lot of tools out there within Esri environment, within QGIS, and I will touch upon those tools there for all the students who are on this call there, or anyone who is interested to know. I'll be just not going into the details. It will be just because this is just an overview. We can talk in details if you want, but Mr. Google is there, and we can certainly search and get a lot of information based on that. Then comes the three-dimensional models there, 3D visualizations. This is not new. It's been in the professional world for a while. Now, how to integrate in three-dimensional models, data into modeling, into creating some outputs that can be integrated well. This is again something that has to be addressed, especially for Pakistan, where we are lacking that information. Now, for floods, it's one of the environmental hazard there, and it brings losses. If we put a question, is flood good or bad? Is it a really terrible thing? No. In my understanding, flood is just like a fire. It is natural. It is cyclic in many times. What we need to do is to adapt ourselves such that we can minimize those losses, and those losses should be minimized both on life and property. Now, how we should minimize that, and for that, forecasting comes in, and we need to have those forecasting done on the rivers, on the watershed level, as Dr. Presenters mentioned. It is possible to do that, but forecasting is important. Based on those forecasting, you go ahead and create some risk maps for effective management. And this is where all of the other tools that were discussed can come in terms of what needs to be done, how to do the proper management there, what kind of tools are out there, and it is based on each area separately. Some areas will have different tools, the other areas will have different tools. It's dependent on that area and land use type. But for that, risk mapping is important. That can define where you are in terms of your land base and reduce those risks. One thing is for sure, IPCC is mentioning it. Previous presenters have mentioned it. There's a lot of literature. We are going into an increased variability both in floods and droughts. When we call drought, we're not talking about drought right now, but drought is important because if there's a long spell of drought followed by a medium spell of flood, that flood effect will be more. So we need to address climate change as a holistically, not as an individual flood alone. And we need to understand those variabilities. Now, in terms of the flow, how the information goes, especially if we talk about floods, we have to understand the floods. And based on that understanding, we have to have the analysis done on the watershed scale. Then comes the hydrological modeling that different tools can be brought in, like HUPS has been discussed earlier. There are a bunch of other tools that has been developed over years. And then we go into the inundation mapping and mitigation strategies after that. So this is the general flow which we should adhere to. Okay, I'll give some broad examples on the previous slides that we discussed. I'll be showing those points over here at the bottom and just discussing it in general. Some of the work that we usually do is in terms of the crossing. What will be the size of the crossing? What will be the size of the culvert? How high the bridge should be from your water level in general terms. So your base, your freeboard height, how much would that be? For that, satellites is important. So in this particular case, we are showing a kind of road that needs to be built up. For that, we need, for any watershed analysis, for any hydrological planning, key data sets is important. And for that, we need to have a high resolution topographic data. LiDAR is extremely important. Many jurisdictions have acquired or have captured LiDAR over the years. You can go for both full feature, which is surface model along with the trees, and you can have the bare earth separated from it, and you can run your model based on that. So how much of that is there in Pakistan? I am not sure. I have worked there in the forestry sector. I know the data is lacking. We as a government or as an individual or researchers or as a student should focus on getting more data. Everyone knows garbage in, garbage out for any model. If you have bad data sets, your output will be bad and your planning will be bad. So need to have good input so that your models are good, your outputs are good, and your planning based on those models are more accurate or more realistic. So you need to have the surface modeling done. Then comes different tools. S3 have a number of tools there. QGIS is another software that can be used. And we can do predicted stream modeling based on that surface model and see where the water would flow from and how much catchment is behind that. The size of particular crossing or the size of a particular culvert that's been placed or a bridge that has been placed so that the tree doesn't or any debris doesn't blocks that off and it causes that bridge to fall or that infrastructure to fail. We need to have the right sizing for that. And we need to know how much is the drainage area behind it, how much water you can expect, and how much flow in a 1 in 50 years flood event or 1 in 100 years flood event, Q50 and Q100, you can expect, and you can define your crossing size based on that. So that's extremely important. For Pakistan, we need to have proper planning or proper sizing done so that the infrastructure doesn't fail. That's one of the key where we want to save the life and we want to save the infrastructure. Floods will be there. It has been there for hundreds of years, and it will come more and more as we see. So how to address that? We can't leave our land. So how to address that is to do a proper planning, do a proper sizing, and put the infrastructure at the right spot, at the right depth and engineer levels there. Knowing about your floods, and for that, previous presenters have discussed the historical floods. What's the flood frequency like? How much is the intensity of those floods? It's important. There are a number of different tools. You can do it in our environment. So there will be some statistician on this call there. So our studio is a really good tool. Python scripting is important. So if you want to learn that, it's a key. So integrate those using new tools. It's much easier. It's more efficient to bring those in. Now, then comes the multi-criteria decision support systems. we need to have the road placement at the right place. We need to have the urban and rural and land use planning there for it. Analytical hierarchy is another term that is being used. Machine learning and optimization is another term. Again, you can Google it out. You can find a lot of literature based on that, and you can tie it up with the flood. What I'm trying to show here or say here is that you can have multi layers analysis one over the other and bring those information in for a particular question. And each layer will add value to the second one. The second one will add value to the third one. And you can bring your analytical hierarchy and machine learning algorithms so that your outcome is more focused on what the real question is about. So in this particular case, if I'm talking about if I have $10,000 in my pocket, which crossing should I go and fix it based on a particular risk level? You have to bring in those layers there and run an analytical hierarchy process and run machine learning so that you can have a learning done on 1 year and then you can project it to the second year. You can bring in satellite monitoring there for multiple years. Those partial temporal analysis bring you more information in terms of how the stream has been shifted from one to the other area based on a particular flood event. Similarly, your LiDAR modeling is a key. Topographic models, as I mentioned, it's very important for us to integrate. You can bring in your vegetative event, heights there into your topographic modeling. You can bring in other variables that are key to your models, and you can run them in one atmosphere for your for analysis. I'm just giving a machine learning and AI application that I recently completed for permafrost mapping. It has nothing to do with flood there, but the real application is the same, and it can be applied on other fronts too. So what we are trying to achieve here is a smaller area that has been mapped, digitized on the heads of digitizing, as well as some information from the field for different levels of permafrost. And you can bring in different variables that goes into it, your landforms, your NDWI, wetness indices, your vegetation indices, your slope, your aspect, and then you can run your code within the R environment and associate different levels of, like for example, an aspect, we know south, southeast, southwest is a drier aspect, and you can associate a certain probability level to those. Similarly, for the northern aspect, you can associate those probability levels. So how to integrate that? You can do that in multi-logistic models. They create those models to produce mapped versus modeled effect, and you can compare the mapped. We have mapped on this left-hand side, model is right-hand side, and you can have this automated in your environment and bring those information into your outputs. Google Earth Engine is one big one. I would like audience to take a note of. It's being used a lot. You can bring in your automation in Google Earth Engine. I can run those within 5 minutes for the flood in Pakistan. I'm not going to do that. Similarly, Sentinel-1, Sentinel-2 imagery, there are newer satellites that are commercial that are out there. You can use those satellites to mark your floods. Sentinel-1 is cloud-free SAR satellite. Sentinel-2 is a multispectral. You can do multiple analysis based on that. Similarly, commercial satellites are much for the same area. This is free one. This is the commercial one. Is giving you more details there and more accurate information. Again, better the data, the better the outputs. Similarly, you can do some time series analysis in terms of how your water levels are increasing or decreasing on a particular landscape scale. Again, this can be automated through machine learning processes, and there are tools out there. Huckers model has been discussed broadly, very important one this has been used by being created within US by the US Corps of Engineers there, and should be applied. And I do see that has been applied in Pakistan, but again, the better the input, the better the output for those. We can bring those outputs into an ISRI environment and bring them to the CAD environment for the engineers to do proper planning. It has been discussed in terms of the radar weather stations there. For that, planning is important. Scenario planning is where you say that if it's 1 in 100 flood event, what will be the flow like, and what will be the amount of extent of the flood will be like. If it's 1 in 250 years flood events, what would the extents like? Again, we are not doing any scenario planning as far as I understand in Pakistan there, especially on the real planning side. Now, models are important to do the risk analysis for this particular case. Two different water bodies, we have to address them separately. Flash floods is where most of the damage to the infrastructure have happened. I'm not going to the details there, but again, some of those tools within HACRES can be applied and brought into to improve further. Collecting the data on citizen science side, right now, everyone has a mobile phone, everyone has is on the social media. We can integrate those information along with the drones to collect the information on the ground. And again, this integration is important because we are resource limited in Pakistan, so we need to utilize the other sources of information as much as possible. So I'll just wrap up. I know I don't want to go over time in my case there. So in summary, good managed data is very important. LiDAR for any hydrological analysis is key. So we should focus on LiDAR, collecting the information so that our outputs are more realistic and more sound. Similarly, satellite data, real-time hydrometric data, and there are multiple tools out there that we can bring in to see the historical floods, and bringing machine learning and AI algorithms that can define the different levels of those predictions, and based on historical floods is important. Scenario analysis, as I discussed on the previous slide, is a key here. For that, HACRES is important. Land use planning was discussed on the previous presentations. I'll also focus it here that land use planning should be done quite realistically in terms of minimizing those losses down the track. Integration of other model outputs with construction and infrastructure planning should be taken seriously. It's not there, and we should really focus on that. Similarly, coordination among different organizations, different expertise levels, hydrologists, climatologists, engineers, policymakers is the key, and it has been brought up earlier too. Education and governance is important for that coordination. So those are the key takings for my presentation. Thank you.